The slide seen round the world, round after round. All eyes were on Shedeur Sanders, whose name was never called until the 5th round of the NFL draft Saturday, when the Cleveland Browns made Sanders the second quarterback they'd draft over the weekend. The Browns traded up with the Seattle Seahawks to select Sanders with the 144th overall pick.
I just say the biggest thing for us, we live by our board. We felt like he was a good, solid prospect at the most important position. We felt like it got to a point where he was probably mispriced, relative to the draft. Really the acquisition cost was pretty light, and it's a guy that we think can outproduce his draft slot. So I wouldn't say it's any more than that. Obviously Shedeur has kind of grown up in the spotlight. But our expectation is for him to come in here and work and compete. Nothing's been promised. Nothing will be given. So I may hesitate to characterize it as a blockbuster. That's not necessarily how we thought of the transaction. But we are excited to work with him.
Okay, that was Browns GM Andrew Berry. Lewis, good morning. Damian, good morning. All right, gentlemen, I sat on this set Friday, all of us, right, as the first round went. And I tried to look at the positive. Hey, blessing in disguise. Maybe he'll be in a better situation. None of us thought he was going to slide to the 5th round. Lewis, what happened, and is this fair to Shedeur?
Well, Molly, I don't think, look, the draft isn't about fairness. That's really not what it's about. And I think the reason why I say that is because I've said numerous different times, this whole process is very subjective, all right? It's very opinionated. There's human beings who are trying to assess players and their fit relative to the NFL and relative to their own, individual franchises. And that's an ongoing year-long process, multi-year long process, because scouts, even though we're primarily concentrating on Shedeur, this year and maybe even last year, it's one of those things where they're compiling a bunch of information both on the field and off the field for a number of different months. And then as it gets down to the wire, there's a lot of things that come into it that really don't have to do with your play on the football field, in particular quarterback. And there's a lot of other people that come into the whole thing when you're talking about then trying to set your final board. I think with Shedeur, look, I've said this numerous different times. This was not a on-the-field thing for me, because you are not going to ever tell me that Shedeur Sanders was worthy of a 5th-round selection based strictly off of what he did on the football field. What this came down to is somewhere in the off-the-field process, okay, when you're trying to assess someone's personal and football character and whether or not they feel as though it warrants a certain level or a certain price to be paid in order to acquire his services, people didn't feel that way. People just did not feel that way. As I said on Sunday or on Saturday to Mel Kiper, the draft is spoken. Whether we like it or not, the draft spoke. And somewhere along the line, people were not comfortable with the risk that would be associated with taking him in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th round. That doesn't mean I agree with it. That doesn't mean that anybody agrees with it. That just means that that's what the teams felt. So now for him, he's going to have to go back and look at that process and say, hey, look, what was it during that process that somehow made these people, meaning the 32 teams, feel as though I wasn't worthy of being picked much higher than I was? Pay attention to those things. Make the kind of course corrections that he needs to, and now compete his rear end off to win the job, which he is fully capable of doing in Cleveland.
I think the NFL sent a message. And the message that was sent was, you are not that guy. Or, as people like to say, you are not him. Because what I've seen, and what many folks have seen year after year after year, if you have that type of talent, regardless of off the field, interviews, guess what? You're going to get picked high, because the NFL teams are in the winning business. They're not in the business of allowing elite talent to just continue to fall. It just doesn't happen that way. Do we see guys slip some? Absolutely. We've seen guys have egregious things in their background where they might slip, but ultimately the NFL is in a talent acquisition business. If they feel like a guy can help us win right now, they're not going to sit there and pass over a guy time after time after time. And so when you talk about Shedeur Sanders, that's part of the equation. The other part of the equation is, okay, if this guy's coming in and he's not that guy, if he's going to be maybe a backup, backup quarterbacks are obscure. They're not guys that's in the forefront. And so if you're a team, do you want a guy that's going to come in with all the celebrity, everything that comes with Shedeur Sanders? You have to think that's part of a big part of the reason why a guy like Shedeur Sanders can tumble all the way to the 5th round. This is the league speaking. This is not, we can sit here and pontificate about Shedeur Sanders and why we thought that he should have been drafted higher. But ultimately, at the end of the day, 32 teams out there sent a message that said, you know what? You're just not him. That's what they said to everyone.
Stephen A., to that you say what?
I think that Deion is saying what I'm about to say in a roundabout way. Louis Riddick, I'm going to be straight up and down with you because you know how much I revere you. I completely disagree with you with what you're saying, and I'm disappointed in what you didn't say. A lot of this was about primetime Deion Sanders. You can say whatever you want to the audience out there, to these idiotic trolls all over social media talking about, you know, Shedeur Sanders wasn't that great or whatever. There is no one, I repeat, no one that looked at Shedeur Sanders and even had him less than the 3rd best quarterback in the draft. This is a quarterback-driven league. This guy was considered one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the draft, and 143 picks came and went before you heard his name. Don't talk to me about football. I don't want to hear a damn thing about football. This ain't about football. This is about something else. And I said that even though it's different, I brought up the name Colin Kaepernick. And why? I didn't sit up there and throw a pity party for Colin Kaepernick. I knew his career in the NFL was over the minute that the NFL organized that workout for him at the Atlanta Falcons practice facility, which was led by Jay-Z and those cats and Roger Goodell and what have you, and he elected not to show up and instead tried to have the workout an hour and 20 minutes away, and he going to notify them 2 to 3 hours before the workout. I said he is done. And I have no sympathy because, damn it, they tried to make it happen because the league had to do it because the owners didn't want to. It's an accident that no owner in the National Football League wanted to touch him. We can use the word collusion. It ain't necessary. They think alike in a lot of different situations. They don't have to collude with one another. There's a universal understanding that this is our league, and we want to do what we want to do the way that we want to do it. And we'll be damned if anybody's going to tell us what to do because guess what? We running the show, and people going to come. They're going to flock to the stadium. They're going to have their tailgate parties. We going to win in the ratings. We going to make damn near $250 million apiece as an owner. Ain't a damn thing anybody's going to do about it. We understood that years ago. But suddenly we going to engage in collective amnesia here. Hold on, Molly, because this is very important.